Hi, I hope everybody's doing really well, and looks like we're almost done with the first week. But today I want to take this time to look forward and begin to talk about the literary argument, the first essay that you'll be asked to write in this course. So I want to begin by looking at that essay, looking at that assignment, and talking a little bit about uh, what I'm asking you to do. So, of course, the essay is over the novel The Road. I hope you've been reading that novel. There is a PowerPoint associated with that novel as well that might have some helpful information or insight, so it might be worthwhile to watch that or go through that as well. Um, the writing assignment that will be due next Friday is found here under writing assignments. And you can see there's two folders here. One is writing assignments and one is student writing examples. I'll talk about this particular folder in just a second. But under writing assignments, you can find a detailed description of the first writing assignment. That's documented literary argument. And so what I'm asking you to do here is your assignment is to write an analytical paper. That means you're going to analyze the literature. You must use the writing process to create your paper. This paper should be 3 to 5 pages in length. The assignment is to analyze the text in Cormac McCarthy's novel, The Road, and argue either that the novel is a novel of hope or argue that the novel is a novel of despair using specific textual evidence and outside research. You have to have both. And so that is the basic assignment. I encourage you to review this assignment sheet carefully. On each of my assignment sheets, I have a section called deliverables. This is a really critical section for you. These are the baseline requirements for this assignment. In this case, it has to be 3 to 5 pages. If you looked over my student grading agreement, 2.8 is not 3. So if you want insurance that you're not going to get penalized for not meeting the minimum essay requirements, make sure you get a line on page 4. The works cited page must also be included with at least 4 sources. So you can't give me 3, you have to give me 4. And then, of course, the paper must be in MLA 8 style. So I'm going to talk about that in a separate video, how to get information and put it into proper MLA 8 style. But for now, I just want to focus on this particular essay and what you might need to know to be successful with this essay. The first and probably the most important thing for you to be successful on this essay is just to make sure that you've read the novel. I know that's a lot in this short mini winter semester, but the novel is pretty accessible. I don't think it's too complex or difficult. Hopefully it'll be something you can really get into and move through quite quickly. It doesn't matter which side of the argument you choose. You can argue that it's a novel of despair, or you can argue that it's a novel of hope, but your essay can't focus on both. You have to focus on just one argument and present that argument to the reader. So think about that, especially if you're still going through the novel, which I'm sure most everybody is. Think about that as you read the novel. Maybe it might be a good idea to highlight sections that support or that are particularly useful in supporting one viewpoint or the other. Okay, so I'm going to shut this description down, and I want to talk a little bit about basic essay organization. I think this is probably a little bit of review for most students, but if not, I want to share this with you. I know many people have taken their 1301 composition in different locations or maybe from different instructors. So I want to give you some sort of baseline information about what I expect in a student essay. This is a really basic outline for this particular assignment. And so I'm going to go through this step by step. In your introduction, an introduction is really short and to the point in academic writing. So this is an academic essay. So make sure you follow the standards that are required for academic writing. So like I said, introduction is short and to the point. It should have a hook, something that gets the reader into the discussion. Ideally, in this case, your hook's simply going to be to introduce the author and the title of the novel. Make sure that you represent your novel correctly in the text. In other words, novel titles are italicized. So you have your hook, where ideally you'll introduce the author and the novel, 3 to 4 sentences of context, no more. You can have 1 or 2 more, but generally 3 to 4 sentences of context, and then your thesis, which is a single concrete statement that states your argument. In this case, you're going to argue whether the novel is a novel of hope or novel of despair. So the argument is pretty straightforward. Then we move to the first body paragraph, and this is where you talk a little bit, or you have the opportunity to discuss a little bit about the counter argument. In other words, if you're arguing that this is a novel of hope, then spend a little time in this paragraph acknowledging that many people, including other book reviewers, when the novel was released, suggested something quite different, and then find some of those reviews and use that as one of your outside sources. So when you create this body paragraph, the counter argument, you must begin with a clear topic sentence identifying that this is what others have said, that this is the counter argument. You must be very clear. It must be a single sentence. And then the second part of this first body paragraph would be an example of research supporting the counter argument. Like I said, maybe you find a book review, so this would be a good place to quote someone who had a different viewpoint than what your paper is going to ultimately suggest about the novel. Then, after you include your research, comment on that research. How does that support that counter argument? And then provide a concluding statement. Usually, the concluding statement in the most ideal situation will provide a transition or a sense of transition into what will be discussed next. Then, from then on out, your paper will solely focus on your single argument. So, body paragraph 3 is the first element of your argument. And so your topic sentence, it's going to begin with a clear topic sentence stating what aspect of your argument you will be discussing. In this particular paragraph, it should focus on one thing. You should then provide research to support this topic sentence. Research can be textual evidence and or research. So you can use a combination of textual evidence. You want to go to the text to prove your point to the reader, so use textual evidence, quote from the book, cite McCarthy, and then also provide outside research. Then anytime that you provide outside research, you must explain to the reader how that research is relevant or how it supports your topic sentence. Then you can go back into some more research if you choose, and more textual evidence, explain how it supports your topic sentence, and then provide a concluding sentence. Ideally, this will provide transition to the next idea or next body paragraph. There are 2 places in your body paragraph where research can never be. It can never be in the first sentence of a body paragraph or the last sentence of a body paragraph. The first sentence of a body paragraph is always a topic sentence, and that's your language. The last sentence of a body paragraph is a concluding sentence that provides transition into the next idea. So every body paragraph, if you have 3 or 4, should follow this kind of order. You also want to try to achieve a balance in your body paragraphs. In other words, you can't have body paragraph 3 with all this research and a well-developed idea, and then body paragraph number 4 with just a little bit of research and where your idea is not very well developed. So you want to strike balance with body paragraphs. That includes balance in content as well as research. If you have 2 research items in one body paragraph, you want to strive to ideally have 2 or 3 in the next, but you don't want to do too much in one body paragraph and then neglect another body paragraph. So try to achieve balance. And then after you have 3 or 4 body paragraphs that support your argument, eventually You get to the concluding paragraph. That's the final paragraph, of course, in your academic essay. The concluding paragraph, and by the way, don't begin your concluding paragraph by saying in conclusion. We know that that's the conclusion because it's the last paragraph, but conclusions never bring up new information. They don't develop any more argument. What conclusions simply do is restate the argument in different terms. That's the first thing they do. Then remind the readers of the main points discussed in each individual body paragraph, and then leave the reader with something to consider or think about or take away from the novel or the argument. So that's ideally what your essay should look like. And so I want to repeat, you have an introduction, a counter argument in your first body paragraph. Body paragraph 3 follows this pattern. Body paragraph 4 follows the same pattern. Body paragraph 5 follows the same pattern. Body paragraph 6 could be your conclusion, and it follows this pattern here. So make sure that you realize that what I'm not suggesting is that you just write 4 body paragraphs. The body paragraph model is here, but you use this for as many body paragraphs as you need to develop your argument. All right, a few reminders. I try to keep this short, but since many of you may have taken 1301 in all kinds of different locations from different instructors, I want to talk about some things that you need to remember, or maybe some things that you may not know. You want to avoid the use of first-person pronouns. You don't want to talk about yourself. You don't want to say I think or I believe. Keep your essay objective. It's an academic essay. It should be objective, third person. Avoid the use of second-person pronouns like you, any form of you, unless it's coming inside quoted material. Avoid excessive pronoun uses, and I would also suggest that you don't use pronouns in topic sentences. So for instance, if you have a topic sentence where you're going to talk about the novel, ideally, and you're going to say McCarthy or Cormac McCarthy, again, don't begin a new body paragraph and refer to the author as he. This is really important because you may have discussed several he's throughout the course of your essay because you're bringing in outside research. So you want to make sure that that topic sentence uses very specific language. Always go back to the book title, and always go back to the author's name. Don't just refer to the book as the book or the novel. Make sure that you go ahead and say the road, and in your topic sentences refer to McCarthy or Cormac McCarthy specifically. Avoid the use of contractions in academic writing. In other words, don't say can't, write out cannot. Avoid idiomatic language, those sort of descriptive, metaphorical phrases that we use all the time but don't think much about them. Stuff like hard as tacks, or sometimes people say things like to add insult to injury. There's a whole bunch of them. You can look these up on the internet. You'd probably be surprised at how many of these you use on a daily basis without thinking about them, but they should be avoided in academic writing because they don't necessarily clearly communicate the same thing to everyone. You must get into the habit of leading into quoted or borrowed material. So, for instance, when you're going to use outside information like textual evidence or research, you might say something like, according to one source, or McCarthy states. But lead into that borrowed material so the reader knows you're about to present research. Refer to research and literature in present tense. In other words, don't say stuff like McCarthy stated, say McCarthy states, McCarthy writes, McCarthy suggests. Keep your research and references to literature in present tense. Use concrete language in both thesis and each topic sentence. In other words, avoid pronouns. I've already talked about that. Research should never appear in the first line of a body paragraph or the last. The first line of a body paragraph is always a topic sentence. That's always your language. You can't just stick a quote there. The last sentence in a body paragraph must be a concluding statement. And remember, when you place research in a body paragraph, it's there to support your topic sentence, and you must comment on that research and explain to the reader how it supports your topic sentence. You can't just leave it there hanging. So if you think about it, because of that, you can't just end a body paragraph with research ever. Every body paragraph in your essay should be supported by research. So you can't have a hypothetical paragraph. You can't just give me a paragraph and not provide research to support that. Remember, this is an academic argument, so it must be supported. So every body paragraph should have either textual evidence, outside research, or a combination of both. All text should be 12 point, Times New Roman, and everything is double spaced in an MLA document from the very first part of your heading all the way down through your works cited page. Every line on those citations, everything is double spaced. Use student examples, and I'll show you this in just a minute, but use a student example to visually see what a proper essay should look like. I never write an essay personally without using an example or having an example available for myself. So it's a good practice, and I suggest that you take time to do that. Check punctuation around citations carefully. A good tip that I tell my students in the ground classes is to take the highlighter tool, and every time you place a quote, go ahead and highlight that quote in your essay, including the citation. And then when you've got everything where you need it to be, go back and very carefully check the punctuation around the citation and inside your citation to make sure that you've handled it correctly. You don't guess. This is a pretty significant point deduction I grade using a rubric, and so I think the point deduction can be upwards of 10 to 15 points depending on what kind of errors you have with MLA citations. So take the time to look at these carefully. Don't just assume that you know, especially if you're a little bit unsure. Use the textbook. There's an MLA section with MLA 8 rules in the back of the textbook. It's a great reference. I'm going to show you some other references in the next video where I talk more about MLA 8. But these are the things that you need to think about as you begin to assemble the information for this particular essay. One last thing, and then I'll close this video. Back into your course content, if you go to writing assignments, student writing examples, you can see that I have a documented literary argument here from a student, and you can kind of go through this and see their citations and their format, and I think it's a good source for that. These aren't necessarily essays that earned 100s, but they did earn top marks in the particular course that the student was taking. You can also see a works cited page. Remember that your citations are alphabetized as they're listed on the works cited page. Everything's double spaced, like I mentioned. So these are really great sources. Incidentally, for what it's worth, it's also potentially a good source for figuring out how to cite your novel, as well as maybe finding some other research that you might find useful. Nothing wrong with finding research by looking at what other people have researched. Anyway, that's all I have for this particular video. I hope this helps. And if you have any questions, like always, please email me. Thank you.